subscribe to the channel here. We appreciate that. It helps us help you continue to bring the content and things that we try to provide to you every day and each week during Penn State football season, basketball season, wrestling season, recruiting season, so on and so forth. You can also sign up at blueillustrated.com for $1. We'll put that promo graphic up in a little bit. Let's get into this stock up, stock down conversation. T. Frank, do you want to start with the positives or the negatives?
Let's start with the positives. Let's be a positive show, because I think that everyone's been focusing on the negatives over the last couple of games. But there are some really important things that are happening good for the Nittany Lions, and I think we should get to those now. So why don't you go first? I like your... And by the way, so we've got these on our kind of our docket over here, 3, 2, 1. I don't have a number of like number one stock up. It's just like these are the three, and then you list 1, 2, 3. So is that how yours is as well?
My stock up is like that. My stock down is ranked in order of who I think has the most stock down followed through the league.
You know what?
Stock up,
Me too.
Yeah, but the stock up is, I would say, equal across the board. Any of them could be number one. But my first one that came to mind, and we decided to do this about an hour before the show, so I did not put a extensive amount of thought into this, but Luke Reynolds was a guy who really had a nice game on Saturday. He finished with a career high 7 receptions on 9 targets, eclipsed the 50-yard mark for the second time in his career, and it just makes me wonder, T. Frank, if he's going to become the tight end security blanket that Drew Allard likes. He went to, and Khalil Dinkins, I don't think we should completely wipe him out of that role after he had some drops on Saturday. But certainly I think that Luke Reynolds took advantage of the opportunities he got because it was a tough day for Khalil Dinkins. And so he's a stock up guy for me this week. Yeah,
and it feels like there was that drop by Dinkins, and then 2 drops, I'd say. James Franklin said that Penn State had, I think, 5 drops on the day. So
he said 5. Yeah, so actually, I wanted to talk to you about this, and let's just do it right now before we get any further. So I think PFF tracked Penn State with 1 drop. James Franklin tracked them with 5. And so it brings up this question that is ridiculous, but also valid, which is, what is a drop? Because you think it would be very easy for everyone to be on the same page. But in the football stat tracking world, it is not the case. So let me get it from you. A drop. What are we calling a drop, and why do you think there's a difference between Penn State's drop counter and PFF's drop counter, and perhaps your own personal one when you went back and watched the tape?
I think there's a 0 tolerance policy for drops for Penn State. That would be my characterization of it. If your hands touch the ball, you need to catch it, because that is theoretically within the frame, but then it becomes the difficulty of said catch. Could you have caught it? Is it reasonable? What is the reasonable threshold for whether or not you caught that? And that's where I am. And I think the Khalil Dinkins one down the seam is a great example of that's 50-50, because so it was too high.
So Nate and I looked at each other.
It was not a good throw, right?
Yeah, Nate and I looked at each other, and we were debating live, like, was it a drop or was it a bad pass? And it was a little bit of both, for sure. Yes.
Yeah. So I don't want to take it too far away from Drew Allard, where he's got to layer that ball over the linebacker. There's a linebacker there. He has to fit that ball. They work on this all the time in the offseason. They got like a 10-foot net where you've got to throw over the net and into the basket. And he threw over the net, but then over the basket, right? So he left it too high. He didn't have the right arc on it. And so that is, I would say, out of the frame of where he would want a perfect pass, but not so far out that Dinkins is absolved of the opportunity to catch it, because he got both hands on it. And Dinkins, I think what we're seeing from him is maybe his hands aren't super reliable outside of the super easy ones. Right. Out of the ones where it's just like right here and it's easy and he's in rhythm and in stride. And he said this himself of like contested catch situations, but I think it's really, outside the frame or in tough situations like that, anywhere where it's not, that seems to be where his struggles are. But those would be the 2 that I can think of. I'm struggling for the other 2 or the other 3 that were drops, but that's more of like, I don't really have a recollection of every pass in the game, in terms of the 50-50 ones in my mind. I didn't think of that many. I would say that I could think of 3, but not more than that.
5 caught me off guard when he said that, because I could remember 2 or 3 as well, but 5 seemed like a bit much.
Contested catch to Reynolds is another one where if it's contested, I would imagine 2 to Reynolds, right? So he had the one on the sideline that he got his hands on. I would say that's hard because even in that situation where the DB had equal control over that ball until they went out of the sideline, and then one where it hit Reynolds on the frame and he didn't come down with it in the red zone, which I think led to a field goal. So now that I'm talking out loud, if you're saying there's a zero tolerance policy, the ball gets to you, you got to catch it. Those would be Penn State's drops. PFF would count those as contested catches that go uncaught. So they're still tracked, but not as straight drops.
All right. Well, that was me derailing the stock up, stock down segment. Let's get to your number one stock up, my number two. So I'll let you just talk about him. We're going to the defensive side of the ball now, where we're not going to talk about drops or contested catches. Go ahead.
Xavier Gilliam, I think, is having a very strong start to the year in the run and the pass game. And this defensive scheme asks a lot of the defensive tackles, and they've got to be able to stop the run. And they got to be able to take on double teams, and they need to be stout at the point of attack. Gilliam's been really good. He has been both splitting and taking on double teams in pass rush. He's been getting through. He had a really nasty swim move where he just shed the guy, swam over top, and got in the quarterback's face. It was late. It was a second reaction move. It wasn't one of those dominating immediate wins, but he's a guy. Every once in a while, Penn State comes across a guy that maybe he's not 6'3" or 4, doesn't have the giant frame to be a nose tackle and the athleticism to be a 3 technique, but has all of the skills of both. And then you just wonder how high that player can push their own ceiling. Gilliam is on the track now that, like, the last guy that I thought could do that just graduated, escaping me off the top of my head. So embarrassing when that happens. But Gilliam's like the... Keziah Izzard, thank you. Athletically, you saw at his pro day, Keziah Izzard, super talented athlete at a big size. Gilliam is similar, and it seems like he's got the kind of the play style and the ability and the, whatever it might be, to get to the quarterback as a pass rusher, which Penn State has struggled with. And I think that actually, now that I've said that out loud, I'm going to change some of my stock down here.
Oh, I like it. Some changes on the fly. Let's go to your number two stock up because, like I said, Xavier Gilliam was my number 2. So let's go to 2 and we're going back to the offense.
Yeah, Venga Ioane. He has been the most consistent offensive lineman, and he's been very, very good. Run blocking, his athleticism has improved, like we talked about. He's surprisingly, and I don't know if this is a technique thing or whatever, you would expect him, and because he had so many of these early, of like highlight, domination, knock the guy over blocks.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily his game. He's more of a control kind of guy. And I think he's done really well of being on his assignment in both games, getting to his landmarks, getting his double teams, all these things. Like, he's been very strong in both run and pass. So really clean for a guy that they talked about as an All-American guard. I don't know that he's dominating to the point he's an All-American right now, but he's definitely on that track. Like, a couple good games against good teams, and we're going to see buzz for him as much as a guard can get buzz.
Right. All right. Number 3 stock up for me. And again, we only picked 3 on each side of these guys and girls. So, of course, we're not going to get to everyone, but Chaz Coleman is an obvious pick. Yep. I don't know how. One of us had to put him on the list. So Chaz Coleman, of course, has a strip sack in the FIU game, flashed a bit despite not hitting the stat sheet in the Nevada game. His stock has been meteorically rising all offseason, and he's now backing it up with the pads on, T. Frank.
Yeah, he's been... I haven't felt this way about a freshman since Saquon Barkley. As a guy who, the way they performed early in their career, like, stopped you in your tracks and made you go, oh, wow. And so that's, I think, says enough there of, like, the company he's in at the moment. Now, obviously, he's got to sustain that. That is something that he can't just do against non-conference opponents, but dominating non-conference opponents is not something that the entire team has been doing. So I think it's fair to say that is a stock up thing. And the last one I'm going to go, and this is probably microwaving just the last game, but I'm going to go King Mac stock up. Yeah. And this is going to get a little bit into what we're talking about here to end the show with what they need to work on in this final game. But he had a strong game against FIU in terms of his coverage, consistency, being in the right place and making plays, both in the run and the pass game. So, I'm not an expert on the scheme in depth of, was he supposed to be in a better position for some pursuit plays, but he got there and made those plays. So I'm going to say slight stock up there for King Mac.
Yeah, Kevin mentioned Gabe Nwosu. I can't, and then I know his second comment was as a punter, but the 2 kickoffs out of bounds has his stock on hold for me. But yeah, he was impressive as a punter. Davian Collins is the cornerback room. We're going to talk about that in just a second. Not him particularly, but the cornerbacks in the stock down side of things. So stay tuned. I know Mech Engineer has been really high on Anai White throughout the morning in the chat. Yeah, he had a nice game against FIU, no doubt. We'll see what that can lead to moving forward. I'm not quite ready to put him in my stock up yet. All right, let's get over to the negative side of things. Steve Frank, stock down. Who you kicking this off with?
Yeah, I'm going to start at 3 and go to 1, and I'm going to start with Cooper Cousins. What we've seen, James Franklin may alluded to, if we say we have 7 offensive linemen that can play, you got to play like it. And Cooper has really struggled in pass protection. And this is an area where coming into college, like, he was a hyper aggressive guy that didn't have elite technique, and watching him in some of the camps where he would struggle in pass protection. Now, he struggled mostly playing tackle, and he's obviously playing on the interior, but it's just an area. It's less now about he's leaning and over aggressive, and it's just an awareness thing now where he's letting a blitzer come through and like locking onto the guy in front of him. And that's the whole point of these defensive schemes, is the stimulus across the face of an offensive lineman is just going to make that guy go with him and not be ready for the secondary reaction of, now there's a guy coming behind you in the gap you're supposed to be protecting. And he's just been slow on those things. And that to me is like, he struggled with that as a freshman, and sometimes last week against Nevada, he struggled giving up a pressure that led to a sack, and then he did it again this week. So that's a pretty consistent downgrade for, you've got to be able to trust him in every situation if he's going to be a part of the starting 6. And I think that's still TBD. I know he's everyone's, favorite son, but he's a young offensive lineman. This is the reality. Not all of them are going to come out of the box like Anthony Donko in their second year.
Yeah, or Drew Shelton for that matter. And I think that's why, I had him on my list as well, only because of the fact that, again, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I think you certainly saw, or at least thought last year, that his progression was naturally going to be right into the starting job that was open for Penn State. Penn State, of course, is playing. They consider him a starter. James Franklin thinks they have 7 offensive linemen who are starters. And I love that, too, when they announce on the big board before the game, there's like 52 starters that Penn State announces for 22 positions. But anyway, that's here nor there. So he was on my list. Number 2, and a guy that was on both of our lists as well, is Penn State linebacker Amari Campbell. So this is more, you mentioned maybe microwaving the last game as opposed to a overall look at things. Did not think he had a good day against FIU. And I thought he was actually pretty decent against Nevada. But against FIU, it seemed like he was running himself out of a lot of plays. It seemed like he was taking routes to balls that didn't, to ball carriers that didn't really add up over and over again. It just, look, one game, not writing him off, not saying Penn State should bench him or, put him back in the transfer portal. But in terms of just over the first 2 games, certainly that last one was tough for him. And we'll see how he bounces back this week.
Yeah, and I think it's concerning because it was kind of the same stuff that got him at North Carolina, where what happened was there was a jet motion that he didn't react to quick enough, and then he overreacted to the next jet motion. And there was another play where he went to the backside of a pitch play, and I still don't know why. Like, I'm still wondering, was he supposed to have contained? And that was early in the game where it was just kind of, I don't know what he saw, because everything went right or everything went to his right, and then he went left. And, those are some concerning things if they're consistent from what he did before, and it wasn't just the North Carolina defense is confusing. That now is a personality trait of Amari Campbell. So I think it's a little more important than just one game. That is something that he does have to clean up for sure, because who does that? Oregon. Like, all these things, again, pointing to Oregon. You learn these lessons on film, both good and bad, for everybody when you put it out there.
Exactly right, T. Frank. So, he was on my list again. I think that is overemphasizing game 2 as opposed to the overall look. But we'll see what he does this week. Certainly some concerning things put on tape by him. My number 1, and this might surprise people, but it's Elliot Washington, only because of his Winter Workout Warrior success and what I thought that was gonna mean for his stat sheet impact over the first 2 weeks. And those 2 things have not equaled out at all. So this is not so much anything he's done wrong. But I don't really remember seeing him in the Nevada game. He was a little bit more noticeable in the FIU game. Only has 2 tackles on the season. I believe he has the 4th most defensive back snaps so far this season. So he's certainly been on the field quite a bit. But just curious to see what the next step looks like for him. It's still so strange to me that the only 2 interceptions Penn State have are from defensive tackles. Considering what this secondary is capable of.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of it is they're just not throwing at them. And this is kind of the nature of this defense of it is the way it plays with some of its off coverages and its obscurities. And I was watching the defensive film this morning to track snaps by position and not just overall snaps in the game. And again, he and Davian Collins is the starting corner. There's no question about that. He gets reps with the first team. And then but this week it was much more even of Elliot Washington was the number 2 at that position. And they rotate an even number of snaps. So I wouldn't, to your point of the stock up, stock down, he's not the starter, which everyone was thinking. He is the number 2 corner, but he's going to play an equal number of reps to the starting 2. And I don't think he's been playing poorly. There was one play where it was an RPO, and it was open, except for the fact that Elliot Washington took the receiver and threw him out of bounds. So he was no longer a part of the play. So the ball just, that's what the sack that the quarterback took in the backfield where he just looked like he was lost. Because he pulled on an RPO and his receiver had been eliminated as if Elliot Washington was a 00 agent.
Yes, he had been ejected from the field of play. Yes.
Yeah.
All right, man, your top stock down, and then we'll get into some best bets.
Kind of the same thing from perception to reality is Dejon Lane. And I think it coincides with something I'm going to be writing about later today. Stock up for King Mac, stock down for Dejon Lane. Doing too much freelancing. Not looking comfortable in coverage in terms of being locked into where his responsibility is and being too reactionary. Young player who wants to go make a play and be good. I don't think that these are negative things in terms of he's reacting because he wants to be confident and be right. But the problem is he's pulling himself out of coverage and there were opportunities for throws that the FIU quarterback just couldn't make because Jenkins had pressure in his face constantly. But later in the year, that might not be the case. And so do you trust Dejon Lane in those situations? And there's some rotational stuff about who's playing where and when in the game that I think it's just week 2. So we saw one sample size, new sample size. Number 3, based on what I see, might be something very different than what we saw in the first 2 weeks. And so I'm going to be tracking very closely who the safeties are and when they play besides Akeem Wheatley. And I don't think Dejon Lane has been the best of the group so far.